Hi everyone, my name is Justin. I'm a fitness instructor at CFB Kingston with PSP, and today I'm going to be speaking on the effects of posture and how it affects our workday cycles, whether our work happens to be more sedentary and static positions, or if we're in very physical jobs where we have a lot more kind of dynamic positioning. So it's not uncommon for a lot of people to have a little bit of neck soreness, neck stiffness throughout the day, or a bit of soreness and stiffness in the lower back. These tend to be the two main areas where people will get sort of muscle fatigue for postural reasons. A lot of this does happen if we're in one position for too long. So whether you sit at a desk, whether you stand at a desk, or whether you are moving a lot throughout the day, if you're kind of doing one thing either continuously or repetitive for extended periods of time, that's where we start to have issues with some of those areas in our neck and our low back. So let's first talk about our big one that tends to have issues, especially through our neck and low back, and that is our static posture of sitting. So that's sitting at a desk through an entire workday. If you're sitting at a desk for hours on end, that can be quite hard on your body, even though you're not moving and you're not necessarily doing physical activity with that. There are still muscles that should be working just to kind of protect your body and keep you in a nice structured position. This tends to be our one where if we're sitting at a computer, using the mouse, typing a lot. You'll find that throughout the day, you slowly start to develop that bit of a forward head posture. So that's when the kind of head starts coming forward, shoulders start slouching. We kind of break that a good upright posture. So I do want to talk a little bit about kind of what's our ideal positioning. Just remember, this will be a little different from person to person, but I want to talk a bit about kind of what we're aiming for to try to be comfy as best we can if we do have to be sitting frequently throughout the day. So when teaching people about how you should be sitting, or helping somebody like set up a chair for their optimal comfort, especially if you are working in a job that heavily uses a lot of computer or desk work, it's very important to be as comfortable as possible during those seated periods. So a little rule I like to use is 90 degrees at the knees and hips. So what this means is when you're sitting, your hips essentially should be at a minimum 90-degree angle. You can be a little bit higher in your chair, but you want to be kind of high enough in the chair that your hips are not sitting lower than your knees. So you're kind of having a nice 90-degree angle, basically from thighs to your torso. You want that 90-degree angle when you're sitting in your chair. For a lot of people, it's going to be more comfortable to actually have that a little bit higher than that 90 degrees, but you don't want to be so much that kind of gravity pulling you out of your chair. Now, I also mentioned 90 degrees at the knees as well. So when we're seated for a long time at our desk, the ideal position is feet nice and flat on the floor, and our knees are going to be again at that 90 degrees. So we want to try to avoid tucking them underneath our chair or stretching them out in front of us too far. Kind of doing one or the other. One's not necessarily worse than the other, but doing kind of anything for too long of a period is going to get sore on the body. That optimal position is going to be that 90 degrees or slightly more. What this does is, think about if you're seated and you have your feet tucked underneath you, you're essentially bending the knee and pulling those muscles through your thigh. So if I'm seated 90 degrees like this, if I go in and tuck my heel back, all these muscles are going to be pulling when I'm in that seated position. What that's going to do is these muscles pulling means they're going to be pulling on the hip as well, which is going to be pulling at your pelvis, which again is going to kind of push you into that forward leaning posture and keep things kind of tight through there, just so that everything's kind of crunkling down as we sit continuously throughout the day. So that's kind of what we want to be avoiding. So I've mentioned a few times that sitting for a long time during the day can be quite hard on our bodies. This actually goes the same for standing. So think of like someone working on a factory floor, standing continuously throughout the day, or especially within the military, if you're in a cook position, that has some strain on the body, just being on your feet continuously in one position for longer periods of time. So what we're looking at is not specifically targeting just seated positions at a desk, but also kind of any sort of static position. So how we kind of counteract that is we want to take frequent breaks, little short breaks throughout the day as much as possible. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to actually be leaving your work, but just kind of switching what you're doing. So if you are sitting at a desk job constantly throughout the day, good idea to kind of be able to get up, go get something from the printer, send something off, grab some items, bring them back to your desk, something that just kind of breaks up that constant static position. Same goes for if you're standing. If you are standing for a long period throughout the day, maybe just take a little walk down the line, that sort of thing, come on right back to your work. It doesn't have to be for a long period, but just breaking up that position frequently as much as you kind of possible. Understand within people's jobs there may not be a lot of downtime to allow for those things, but just try to make it easiest for yourself as best you can. And take those breaks when you're able. Next, I'd like to talk about something that's not done for posture in the immediate time that you are working, but something that you use kind of as a preventative tool to help reduce its effects on you. Kind of something that you can kind of keep up all the time that you can work on. We're going to start first with the lower body. So big thing that's going to help out with your posture is going to be your hip mobility. So I spoke earlier about when, if you have your feet tucked under you, those muscles through the thigh are pulling on the hips, pulling you forward into that forward leaning posture. So if, from the start, if you have good mobility through your hips, that's actually going to help reduce the strain of things like that on you in the first place. So I've actually spoken about in a previous video that I've done about the importance of squatting and being able to perform the basic pattern of the squat movement. I also mentioned then too that I'm not saying that everyone needs to be squatting extremely heavy loads. That being said, everybody does have to be able to adopt a squat position. And this is actually a very good way to see how you're doing with your mobility through your hips. If you can squat down to that 90-degree position, probably already a good start there for you. When it comes to a seated job, just being able to adopt that position makes it a lot easier to get in and out of a chair, makes you a lot more comfortable even when you're seated there as well. Because if your muscles and everything's real tight and stiff through your hips, through your thighs, while you're sitting throughout the day, everything's going to get sore a lot easier, and that's actually then going to kind of work its way up and affect your low back and kind of cause problems there when being seated a lot throughout the day. So in short, if you move well through your lower extremity, very less chance that you're going to be having an increased level of soreness when you're kind of in a static position seated throughout the day. The better you're actually able to move, the better you'll actually be able to handle those static positions as well. So this one's going to be a fairly obvious one, but having good mobility through your upper body, so that's kind of including chest, upper back, shoulders and your arms, as well as your neck and head, is actually going to do wonders for your posture. If you kind of go into a more sedentary or static position throughout the day, if you're already kind of stiff and tight through your upper body and kind of not being able to move well, not able to raise the arms, shoulders, that sort of thing, that's really going to have a heavy effect on that forward lean posture. The more mobile that we will be throughout the upper body, similar to the hips, the easier it is going to be for us to kind of sustain static postures while we're working. So if we're looking at having good mobility through the upper body, things that we're actually looking for is like the ability to like circumduct your arms, make full rotations with your shoulder, even with like say an exercise such as the overhead press, being able to press something up over your head, bring your arms close in to your head. In this, having spent some time working in clinics with people who've had shoulder and neck injuries or just kind of repetitive strain or soreness from a constant static posture, such as sitting kind of in a forward hunch position all day. One of the biggest things that I kind of look for is when we we do a test, I ask people to say, like, it's like, oh, can you put your hands over your head? And like, so I want people to reach to the ceiling. I want people to be able to reach up like this. What I do tend to see a lot is people being, oh yeah, I can reach to the ceiling, but it kind of does like this sort of motion, and they do a little bit of kind of a weird movement with the arms. What we want to try to do is break the habit of finding just ways to get to an endpoint, but being able to instead move well from the get-go. Being able to move well through the upper body and kind of keep the upper back nice and strong will allow us to sit nice and tall, will allow us to stand nice and tall, even when we're walking, give us that kind of upright posture that we want, that's going to kind of keep everything nice and moving well through our upper extremities. So moving on from speaking specifically about the lower body and upper body, I want to talk just a little bit more about basic functional strength as it relates to your core muscles in the body. So essentially in our back, when we're holding a static position for a long time, most people will tend to get sore kind of through the low back. This is due to muscles in the low back overworking themselves and then just getting fatigued and not being able to continue essentially kind of holding you in that nice tall upright position. Where this comes from usually tends to be a weakness through the core muscles. So kind of from the back versus the front. With the abdominals are kind of not taking their share of the workload, it's going to put an extra workload on the low back muscles, which really shouldn't be working that hard. So our core muscles have quite a few kind of main purposes and functions in our body. A few of the big ones I want to talk about is actually the resistance of movement. So this comes from essentially our core muscles want to work on resisting overflexion of the body. They also want to, so core muscles work on resisting this motion. They also work on resisting overextension, this motion. They also work on resisting rotation. So if kind of something's coming from our side, or if we're kind of handling a load off to the side, ideally we shouldn't be picking something up just like this and bringing it across the body. We should be picking something up, turning with our whole body to set it back down. But those core muscles do help with resisting kind of that quick motion, rotation to the side. So what that means is we need to train the core muscles in such a way. So exercises such as your plank, where the body's not actually moving and resisting motion, is going to be kind of your best bet for strengthening those core muscles. Same goes for doing a side plank. You're going to be working those side core muscles through your obliques, keeping things strong to resist any sort of fast turning motions that we want to avoid. If our core muscles are nice and strong and able to resist motions and resist forces on the body, that means that our low back muscles aren't going to have to be taking that load, and they can kind of focus on their function, which is meant to be small postural corrections throughout the day when we're moving. So we have these muscles called your erector spinae, which are very, very small muscles kind of at your low back. Essentially what these do are, they help with small corrections of the posture. So something like, if you go to like lean forward, they're kind of the muscles that will remind you, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay nice and upright. Those small muscles should not be the ones having to resist extension and flexion movements of the body. That should be taken on by those core muscles. That's where they kind of play an important role in helping keeping your back healthy. So along with having good kind of basic functional strength, which will help keep our core nice and healthy to help protect our back, that means we want to kind of incorporate that into our training. So kind of combining all core, upper extremity, lower extremity all together, that means we really do want to incorporate into our training those big functional movements. So like I mentioned before, being able to complete that squat pattern, being able to push with the upper body without the head coming forward too much, being able to pull with the upper body and keep that upper back nice and strong, being able to lift things up overhead, having that strength and having that mobility gives us a good overall functional strength that's going to keep us nice and healthy, whether our job is a bit more physical and we're moving throughout the day, or if we do have to adopt more sedentary positions or static positions, whether that's sitting or standing. Just being kind of generally functionally strong is going to help make all of that a little bit easier. As we incorporate those main patterns into our training programs, we also want to make sure that these functional movements just become a natural occurrence for us. So I talked about earlier how before we don't want to pick things up by picking them from the side, bringing them to our other side. We want to be able to turn, get down, pick it up, turn the body. We want to try to make that just a natural thing. So for some people it will take practice, because kind of breaking bad habits does take a bit of work, but it's as much as possible trying to make sure that we move our bodies in the way they are meant to be moved. So today we kind of talked about the hazards of what kind of a static or a repetitive position brings to our posture, and how that can have an effect on our body. But we also kind of talked about a few things that we can do to help reduce the strains of that. So one of the biggest things being making sure that we are taking very short but frequent breaks, whether it's to change position or just to move the body a little bit. Talking about the importance of hip mobility and upper body mobility, as well as the strength through the lower extremity and the upper body as well, and making sure that our core is nice and strong to resist overflexion, overextension of the back, and avoid too much rotation through there. If that's nice and strong, that will protect those muscles through your back that do help you maintain that correct posture throughout the day. And then just kind of chatting a little bit about the importance of having down pat your main movement patterns, your squatting, your pressing, your pulling, and then also being able to keep those movements kind of as a natural part of our day, something that we kind of go to automatically. We want to make it so that we don't even really have to think about it as we're moving. It's just a natural thing for us to do. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Hope you got some information on some ways to either help work on your own posture, or just a little bit of a reminder of things that you can do, whether it's just through your normal day or through your training programs, that can help improve your posture, kind of improve your comfort while you're working, whether it's a bit of a static job or whether it's dynamic and you're moving quite a bit. If you do want to follow along with us and check out any of our other videos, there will be a link below this video. Thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful day.
PSP Kingston, the health and wellness provider for the military community.